available. I'm here. So I'm Lisa Hodiale, Marketing and Communications Manager, and my colleagues are also in the room, and they'll be presenting, and they will introduce themselves, which unit they are in, and what they do in the unit before they present. Just also to get an idea of who the audience in the room is, you can drop your name in the chat, where you work, and what are the opportunities that you are looking for in social housing, so that we can have a sense of who is in the room. So in terms of how we will proceed today, we will take questions after each presentation. And if you have a question, you can just raise your hand, and then we will take the questions in 3 rounds. And then I'll just start by giving just a high-level overview of social housing is, just so that we have that background understanding before we get into the more specific presentation. All right, is everybody able to see the slide? Am I audible?
Yes, you are now.
Yes, we can hear you.
All right, so were you able to hear me the whole time, or was I on mute?
You were on mute for about 2 minutes.
Okay, all right. Okay, so so in the presentation, I'll go through the social housing overview. We'll go through the SHI and project accreditation process, the project and development and funding process, and then we'll go through sector development and transformation, and then supply chain management. So social housing is one of about 5 programs within the human settlement portfolio. We as the SHRA report to the National Department of Human Settlements. And social housing forms part of, so in terms of social housing, we focus on the rental offering to low and moderate income households that do not qualify for bonded housing or fully subsidized state housing. And our market is households that earn between 1,850 and 22,000 a month. And then our intent is to redress the imbalances of the past by bringing lower income groups into areas where there are major economic opportunities, so that different people, different races, and different classes, through the promotion of spatial access, can have equal opportunities, and this will also promote job creation. So, as an SHI, or say our delivery partners, we call them social housing institutions, and we also call them other delivery agents. So to qualify for public funding, SHIs must be accredited by the SHRA, and the policy also enables private sector companies, which we call other delivery agents, or ODAs in short, to develop and manage social housing projects. So our mandate comprises of 3 pillars, which is invest, enable, and regulate. We invest in social housing projects and accredited SHIs in order to foster the development of sustainable integrated communities. And then we enable, and that means that we have a role also to create an enabling environment for people to participate in social housing. So we offer several types of grants to accredited SHIs to allow them to manage social housing projects and to develop projects. And then we also regulate SHIs to develop and manage social housing projects to ensure high quality rental housing is available and affordable to the low to middle income groups. And that also ensures that we protect the state investment in social housing projects. As the SHRA, we have 4 main programs. We've got the administration program, which we call corporate services, and it comprises of finance and supply chain, legal and corporate governance, risk management, human resources, and ITC. And then we've got the Office of the CEO, where the strategic planning, policy and research function, performance information monitoring and evaluation, as well as marketing, communications, and stakeholder relations. Those functions sit in the CEO's office. And then program 2 is the compliance and accreditation and regulation unit. We've got sector development and transformation and the project development and funding unit. And the following presentations will basically delve deeper into what those units do in ensuring that we're able to deliver social housing projects. In order for us to deliver social housing, we work with a variety of stakeholders who all play a role in social housing. We've got the National Department who funds the SHRA, and we are accountable to the National Department. We've got our provincial departments that we work with. We've got local municipalities, which are also responsible for gazetting restructuring zones, which are then approved by the Minister of Human Settlements. We've got our delivery agents, which are the SHIs and the ODAs. We've got debt funders because even though we do provide a grant, the balance of the funding that you would need to complete a project, you would have to acquire debt funding for that. So we've got the National Housing Finance Corporation, which is also an entity of Human Settlement, other government development funders, and also private funders like your normal traditional banks as well. We've got the Housing Development Agency, which is responsible for land and buildings. We've got the NHRBC, which is responsible for compliance matters in terms of the construction process. We've got the National Association of Social Housing Organizations, of which some of the delivery agents belong to. And then we've got civil rights and advocacy groups. So that is, in a nutshell, what social housing is all about. So now we are going to ask Sanele Maluleke, who is the acting accreditation manager, to take us through the SHI accreditation process. Sanele, I will run the slides and you can let me know when you need to the next slide. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Lesego. I hope I'm audible.
Yes,
my name is Sanele Maluleke. I'm Acting Accreditation Manager. I'm from the Compliance, Accreditation and Regulations Unit. So in terms of our SHI accreditation, our legislation requires that any business, for the business of social housing, it's prescribed that you need to apply to the regulatory authority for accreditation. So this is where social housing institutions come about, which they are non-profit companies that develop, own, and manage affordable rental accommodation. So SHI is accredited by the SHRA in accordance with the Act, and the social housing regulations. Next slide, please, Lesego. There are two types of delivery agents. So to partner with the SHRA in terms of delivering social housing, you can either become a social housing institution. This includes MOEs that help the SHRA to fulfill the mandate of accrediting institutions, meeting accreditation criteria as social housing institutions. We also have other delivery agents, which include the private developers. This allows the SHRA to partner and work with the private sector. Next slide, please, Lesego. So to become a delivery agent, you go through SHI accreditation, which the purpose of this accreditation is just ensure sufficient and viable capacity to develop, own and manage its social housing stock. So in SHI, I would approach the SHRA before having a project, but having prospect of land, and they'd be looking to be accredited prior to bringing a project to the SHRA. Whereas ODAs, their accreditation is referred to as ODA project accreditation, which really means that when they approach the SHRA, they already have a project and they register their project with us, and then they would go through the accreditation process. The entity must develop and have management arrangements. This applies to both entities. However, the difference is that the SHI accreditation, the SHI entity cannot distribute any profits, wherein ODAs have no restrictions on declaring profits. Next slide, please. The output of SHI accreditation, you become conditionally accredited upon your first, your first encounter going through accreditation process with the SHRA. You've met the criteria and your accreditation is valid for 3 years. Once you start managing stock, you are then eligible to obtain full accreditation. This is through meeting the requirements under the compliance conditions. So to obtain full accreditation, you need to manage stock and you are monitored in how well you do so, and you would then be awarded full accreditation. Next slide, please. The qualifying criteria for SHIs, this is found in our regulations. We require your legal form. This looks at whether you are not-for-profit entity. We want to see that in your founding documents. We have several types of entities that we do allow, NPCs, which are not-for-profit by their very nature. Private companies, if you are a private company, we'd want to see in your MOI, in your founding documents, that you would not be distributing profits to your directors. And then we do have MOEs, which are municipal-owned entities. The governance, we look at your policies, we look at how you align with the King Code in terms of your corporate governance principles. We would look at your board charters and look at your board makeup and the committees that should be setting up as per the King Code. In terms of your financial sustainability, we'd be looking at your documents in terms of the policies and how you'd be running your entity and the controls you'd have in place for it to be financially sustainable. We do look at your AFSs, and if you are a new entity, then you would provide a letter from the auditor just showing that you haven't been trading. The tenant management and property management policies are at its core of what we need for a partner in social housing. We need to ensure that you are able to run your company and you are able to manage our beneficiaries, the tenants, in according to the social housing regulations. So we look at the property management and tenant management policy to ensure that there's alignment there and that you understand the income bands that you'd be dealing with, and how to manage, things like rental boycotts, and what mechanisms you have in place for vacancies, and how you will deal with the maintenance of the property. Property development is, a requirement, because we would need to see your capabilities in being able to deliver a social housing projects as soon as you become awarded the social consolidated capital grant. Next slide, please. So the accreditation information required, there's quite a lot of information that is required. I'm talking to this slide and the next slide. We do look at, it's being viewed as being quite cumbersome, but it's documents that we require, and they align with the regulations. We are, looking at streamlining our processes to see how we can, relieve some of the pains through the legislative review process that we are undergoing at the SHRA. I know our CEO did mention this at the previous stakeholder engagement, that the accreditation team is currently working on legislative reviews to see where we can assist applicants in not reducing the requirements, but trying to see where we can deal with the most important documents firstly, and then or assist with policy templates. However, this is work that's currently taking place in the background. But currently the requirements, please move to the next slide, Lesego, as you see them in these two slides. Next slide, please. The process in terms of timeline is a 90-day process. So this is 90 days from receipt of project. However, the 90 days is actually governed by the fact that our SHRA Council does sit on a quarterly basis. So this is how the 90 days came about. But how we deal with SHI accreditation applications, we receive them and then we conduct a pre-screening, and then we would send out verification reports. Verification reports allow the applicant an opportunity to respond to the outstanding items. And from there, we are able to then determine which of these applicants meet the minimum requirements to move to the next stage of being assessed by an external assessor who provides an independent review. And then the report from the external assessor would be tabled at the SHRA committees for approval, and the outcome would then be communicated to the applicant. Thank you. Next slide. So the project accreditation process deals with how when we receive projects at the SHRA through our projects@shra.org.za email address. The project is received and it is pre-screened for minimum investment criteria. If you are an ODA, this is where you would this is your touch point with the SHRA. You would then engage with us with the project already being available. You'd register your project and we would assess you as an entity. For SHIs who do meet the minimum investment criteria, obviously, at this point, we don't have to look at the entity in terms of Quick Scan A. However, we would be receiving your project and it would go for noting at a comment code to project application. So this is basically the process flow. Please move to the next slide, Lesego, while I talk through it. When you register a project with the SHRA, there are 3 key tools that we send you, which form part of the project application pack. The first tool is the Quick Scan A, which deals with your organizational viability. As I had mentioned, SHIs would have already gone through the organizational viability assessment to obtain SHI accreditation. Therefore, when they receive the application pack, they do not have to worry about this tool. There is a technical viability tool, the Quick Scan B, that is received in the application pack that looks at the technical viability, your statutory requirements having been met, and we look at the how the designs are and how the project technical viability and what stage it is at that point. The financial viability tool is the QuickScan C tool. Please move to the next slide. So these tools you need to package and send back to us. This is what we'd received before registering the project on our pipeline. The organizational viability, similar to what we look at with SHIs, deals with the financial viability and efficiency, governance and organizational capacity. We look at your property development as well as property management and tenant management. We look at essentially the same things. Instead, the difference is that we don't, at this point for ODAs, worry about the not-for-profit criteria, so that does fall away for ODAs. The technical viability, we're looking at whether your project falls within the restructuring zone, and we want to see your statutory approvals being placed. Projects that meet minimum investment criteria need to have municipal support as well as provincial support. To obtain provincial support, you need to present your project at a PSC, a provincial steering committee, at the province that has jurisdiction over the project that you would be bringing to the SHRA. The land availability we would look at as part of Regulations 19. We need a valid OTP or sale agreement, or you could have a lease with the state that is not less than 30 years. That is our requirement with Regulations 19. However, the land availability is vetted by our legal team. We look at your town planning conditions to see, how far you are, if you are currently busy with rezoning or subdividing. But we'd want to see from a town planner's report, which stage you're at there, your environmental authorizations, the design considerations, that's all what we look at, the technical viability. The financial viability, as I said, the QuickScan C tool, the built-in KPIs would look at the development cost, your sources of funding, and the cash flow projections, as well as, the revenues you'd be making from the rental income. We also look at your project operating costs and the debt service cover ratio that must not be less than 1:3, and your vacancy and IRR. Next slide, please. As Lesego had mentioned, the income bands that we deal with in social housing, our beneficiaries, our primary target market is the lower band. We look at the primary beneficiaries earning from 1,850 to 6,700, and the secondary beneficiaries must be earning 6,701 to 22,000. And the split that we do require is the 30% to the primary beneficiaries and 70% to the secondary beneficiaries. However, it's important that there is a market demand study that does support the rationale for the unit split. We do, want that there be tenants in the development. So it's important for us to see that there was a market demand study that was conducted to get to the unit splits. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, the QuickScan A, as well as the project minimum investment criteria, these two components are what make ODA project accreditation. So for an ODA to move to the next stage in terms of ODA project accreditation, you need to have a QuickScan A that does demonstrate organizational viability, and you need to meet the project minimum investment criteria. When all of this is met, you would then be moved to the COMENCO for presentation, and they will recommend you further to the approval committees for that ODA to move to project application, where the QuickScan B and QuickScan C would be assessed further. For SHIs, they are noted at the COMENCO, and they move to project application for QuickScan B and QuickScan C without having to go to the other approval committees for the entity. However, because of the sequence that I did show earlier on, these processes can run in parallel. So you are looking at a 90-day. We usually aim for the approval committees. So if an ODA is presented at a COMANCO and they're recommended to EXCO, that does trigger the assessment of the QuickScan B and QuickScan C, so that both applications for CCG as well as application for the ODA project accreditation, the entity moves to the same SHRA council to obtain approval. Next slide, please. So in terms of project packaging, to achieve a successful project, we do need a balance in all these, factors. The good governance, good tenant management, funding is critical. Good property management, high rental collection. It's important for our entities to be sustainable. We need maintenance. The asset, needs to be maintained. We do have that KPI built into our QuickScan C as well. Sustainable operating costs, as well as, property development also being important as a partner with the SHRA. Next slide, please. In terms of the assessment approach, so with the accreditation team, what we do in terms of pre-screening and internally, we do look at, we have an evidence-based approach where we look at the evidence from the assessments, hence why with every tool, there needs to be supporting documentation. We don't just look at the tools alone. We do have an interactive approach from the first engagement with the SHRA all the way to call committees. We try to have open communication with our delivery agents or our potential delivery agents at that point, where we have meetings, project introduction meetings, where we do facilitate pre and post application briefing sessions. This is what we try to do with the accreditation team. Next slide, please. And the SHRA has tried to be more proactive in their approach by trying to look at areas where there isn't much social housing activity taking place. We look at, we worked closely with our stakeholders in the local and provincial spheres of government to try and see where there's a need. We had an open day last year, the 31st of May in Free State, where we were inviting, people who are interested in social housing to come and find out more. And I think we do have one or two, SHI Zanele would confirm that a bit later, that are currently undergoing support, pre-accreditation support from that province. So we try to really go out and encourage participation in the sector. Next slide, please. And in terms of the, the foundation of the accreditation units, a competent and impartial assessment team is at the heart of the accreditation unit success. So this is what, is very key to ensuring that we are able to meet the needs of the sector, and we are able to be to have agility in how we assess applications to get them through the process funnel. The unit must operate within the provisions of applicable legislation, and we basically, we are not static. We do continuous reviews, and improvement is crucial for the continued relevance and the success of the unit. There must be sufficient candidates, for accreditation, and that is an external factor that we do try to, well, we cannot control, but we do try to encourage that participation, as mentioned in the previous slide. So, cooperation by delivery agents is, very key in, getting projects to move further in the process, as well as with SHI accreditation. it's key that we do have that relationship where there's cooperation and you provide feedback and you show that you are responsive to the queries of the accreditation units. Thank you, Lesego. Next slide. I think that was my last slide. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Sanele. Mandla, I can't see, so we'll go into a Q&A based on Sanele's presentation. Mandla, please assist me because I'm not able to see the hands because I'm flighting. So you can just pick 3 hands and then take the questions, afford Sanele an opportunity to answer, and then we can go to the next 3 questions. Thank you.
Yes, Chair. There's no hand for now. I don't know. Is there any question on Sanele's presentation? It looks like, let me check. No, there's no question from Director.
All right. Okay. We'll then move on to sector development and transformation, and then we will ask Dudu Poswa, who is the sector development and transformation specialist, to take us through that presentation.
Thank you, Lesego. Good morning, everyone. My name is Dudu Poswa Chibwana. I'm the Sector Development and Transformation Specialist within the Sector Development and Transformation Unit. There's basically about 4 of us in the unit. It's our executive and 2 specialists and a project funding administrator. So when you come into the SRA and you are requesting support, we are the unit that manages the institutional investment grant that supports our institutions in terms of their sustainability. So our mandate is then to make sure that as per the regulations, we properly administer and manage the institutional investment grant, which supports the growth and development of the social housing sector in terms of new entities that wants to partner with the SRA, whether they are submitting their application for accreditation or they are submitting their projects on the pipeline. And also, we ensure that there is an effective and an efficient, well-functioning and managed delivery agents through the supports that we are providing, so that the landlords are able to manage the properties in a manner that will be sustainable in a long period of time. And we ensure this through various interventions that we run at the SRA to provide support to social housing institutions and ODAs, as well as the sector as a whole. And also to promote a transformed social housing sector across the entire value chain. My colleagues from the supply chain will also come and give us a presentation on that one. Please, next slide, Lesego. So the sector development is there to provide support to institutions, to projects, and also to the sector as a whole in undertaking the development of the units. So we work together with the the car units, which Sanele has just done presentation, in order to support new accreditation applicants. So what happens is that when you come in and you are not accredited with the STRA, you come in as just a new person, there is a support that we provide to ensure that your application meets the minimum requirements. So there is a funding for that, and also to ensure that the project that comes into the pipeline and there are gaps into those projects. There is also another funding that supports those projects to ensure that they meet minimum investment criteria. Our units also works closely. I think someone-
Apologies to interrupt. I think somebody is not muted. Can we all mute so that we can all hear the presentation? Thank you.
Thank you. And we also work with the compliance units where institutions are now running the properties, are managing the properties. And there are issues in terms of how they are managing those properties. There is lack of compliance. So you find that sometimes those institutions, they run into organizational dysfunctionality, and we come in to then look at what is happening in the institution so that we provide necessary support to bring the institution back into normality. And also the support is provided to sector through engagement with provinces, municipalities, and other stakeholders. So the implementation of social housing is a multidisciplinary program where we have provinces, we have national, we have municipalities, and us as a STRA working together to support the delivery of units within each province and within each municipalities. So we do work closely with these other spheres of government to make sure that when projects are presented, we sit together to evaluate and assess these projects and ensure that there is support through municipalities in terms of land release, identification of restructuring zones, as well as developing policies that ensure that there is progress within municipalities in terms of them meeting their mandates on the social housing program. So we do also conduct workshops for municipalities and provinces so that they understand the implementation of social housing and what is required of them and what is expected of them in terms of them meeting their targets as well. Next slide, Lesego. So what sector development and transformation does is basically to capacitate the sector, to capacitate new entities that require support to become conditional accredited entities, or when you are fully fledged SHI, then also we support you in terms of maintaining that status and even acquiring a full accreditation status. So our support is dependent on proper compliance management, which the delivery agents must comply with. There are quarterly reporting that is done by those institutions that are managing properties through our compliance unit, which also does evaluation and assessment on whether institutions are meeting the targeted benchmarks. And also looking at our good accreditation processes which SANELE has taken you through, and as well as ensuring that there is a credible pipeline where institutions now have submitted projects on the pipeline. So regarding the projects in the pipeline, one of my colleagues is going to speak to you about the processes. But what we normally do within the SDNT unit is to ensure that projects that are deemed to be our quick win and they are requiring support, that is where we normally put more efforts to ensure that we are able to also meet our target of 18,000 units that is required for us per the 5-year period. So it means, what does this mean? It means that when we work with institutions that have submitted projects in the pipeline, there are also requirements that we look at to ensure that your project meets all the necessary required investment criteria as set in the regulations. So as a result, we have initiatives that we look at in terms of how well we support you as an SHI that is accredited with SHRA, or as an ODA that is also accredited with the SHRA. Can we move on to the next slide? So I'm going to be talking to you about the fundings that are available that you can access so that you are able to get your accreditation, you are able to have a project that is viable. Also, other funding that relates to capacitating the sector, just like we are doing our trainings where we run trainings. We invite also the public to come and attend, which are run for free. And also we run our intention program through these fundings, and also ensuring that there is research and development that is done through this funding. Next, Lesego, that slide is not showing on my side.
Okay, let's give it a few seconds.
Okay. So the first grant that is available is a pre-accreditation grant. Is available to entities that wants to get an accreditation with the SHRA. So what normally happens here is that you reach out to our accreditation units, submit your application. We are not looking at a perfect application, whatever application. So our accreditation unit and us work together to ensure that you are able to submit required documents like your application. Why are you applying for to be accredited as an SHI? And also we look at if you are a valid entity, you have your triple BEE certificates. So, and as well as if you have approached landowners that are selling land, you have an OTP, or you do have a land agreement. Those are basically requirements that will allow us to provide the funding so that you are able to get your application together. And we do this through appointing service providers, because the regulation requires us to to accredit service providers that will then be appointed to work with institutions. So the pre-accreditation grant can cover up to 200,000 Rand for the work that needs to be done. So with accreditation, there's a lot of things that are needed. You need to have your policies in place. So what we have seen in the application is that some of the applications, they don't meet the requirement and they get declined. And we come in there to say, okay, let us just help this entity so that it's everything that, or all the documents that have been submitted, you know, are cleaned up, are written, if it means to rewrite them, or if it means you don't have a property development policy, then the service provider will also be able to assist in developing those policies, and also looking at what areas where there are gaps with your application, so that the service provider that is appointed works with you in terms of closing those gaps and the required documents that is needed from your side to put together your application. So there is this pre-accreditation grant that we support entities. The second grant is the project feasibility grant. So this grant, for you to qualify for this grant, you must be an accredited SHI, or you must be an ODA that has submitted projects in the pipeline. So your projects must be in the pipeline, because we cannot provide the grant where there is no projects in the pipeline. So to give us comfort, and we then require for you to submit your projects on the pipeline through the accreditation unit. And also, we look at what are the gaps that are there in your project's application, your documents, and things that are required to meet minimum investment criteria. So this grant goes up to 750,000. It's also, regulations also requires us to appoint service providers in the built environment to then work with you as an entity in terms of looking at the feasibility of your project, or the viability of your project, what things that are outstanding that are easy to mitigate. Some of the issues like rezoning or township planning, we are unable to actually assist within a short period of time, because those kind of processes, they take longer with municipalities. So we look at things like your SDP plans, your architectural designs, whether they meet our norms and standards. Where things are not meeting our norms and standard, the service provider will then work with you to ensure that whatever things that needs to be corrected in your application are corrected. So that's the project feasibility grant, and it's available to social housing institutions, ODAs, and also pre-accredited projects. Can I have the next slide, Lesego? So the Staff Gear Up grant is when now you are developing your projects. We understand that not every entity has the resources to appoint their new staff. So this grant is there to assist institution now developing your project. Maybe your project is up to 80% completion, and some of the units now need to be tenanted. So this grant is available to you as an accredited institution to say you can appoint your operational staff, like your tenant liaison officers, your cleaners, and then also your maintenance guys, so that you can start tenanting your properties. This grant is only given for a period of 6 months, and it is kept at 500,000. And after 6 months, we understand that you would have tenanted most of your units and income will now be coming in, and then the grant cease to be implemented. This grant does not need us to appoint a service provider for you. It's given to the entity directly, and then they are able to pay the salaries to their employees. The next one is the remedial action grant. This is particularly meant for compliance of the institution, where funding is provided for instances of non-compliance to enable the institution to reach compliance status. So once you are now managing the properties, the compliance units and the regulations units are there now to ensure that you are managing the properties in a manner that is deemed to be correct and efficient and effective, that no monies are wasted or there is no maladministration. Where there is maladministration and the institution is now found to be in want, that is also where we look at what is happening in this institution and what support is needed to ensure that you are governing the institution in a manner that is required. So there is a funding for this also, but it is variable in terms of the work that also needs to be done to ensure that we are bringing in turnaround. The organization is brought to its viability. And then the last one is the general capacity grant. Each general capacity grant also is meant for public sector, is meant for SHIs, is meant for ODAs, is meant for our government departments such as your provinces, your municipalities. So this basically is to assist with the sector in terms of professionalizing the sector, research and innovations, and also to ensure that the sector is well capacitated. Also, it includes our internship program that we started last year, where we are appointing new graduates and placing them within the SHRA and also within the sector. So our internship program, so where SHIs or ODAs require interns, then we are able to assist them. And also we do trainings, we do incubation for new SHIs. We support municipalities in various provinces with the work that needs to be done. We have a program for municipalities where currently we have about 12 municipalities that we are assisting, providing technical advisory to them. And also it assists in terms of demand studies that basically provinces and municipalities will require, or the institution is submitting a project and they haven't done an effective demand study, so they can reach out to the SHRA for this kind of assistance. So this also, the grant quantum also varies in terms of the work that needs to be done, and it's kept at $1 million rands depending on the work that it needs to be done. Lesego, I think I am done. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Are there any questions for sector development?
Is Luando?
There's one question from Luando.
Hi, morning, Dudu. Dudu, just one question on the staff care grant, right?
Yes.
Is there specific requirements? I did see it's only on the completion of the project. And then also, what is the timing around that? Because obviously, once a project's completed and we need access to that funding, waiting 90 days for that, kind of puts us on the back foot. So I just want to know, like, what is the estimated timing for us getting approval for that in cases where we do need it?
Okay. Can you please repeat your first question, Luando?
Just the timing and requirement for the staff gear up grant.
Well, okay. So do you have a project that is under construction right now?
It's we have an approved CCG, and we're still meeting financial CPs, which is due by end of March.
Okay.
So yeah, so we intend on going and starting development within the next month. Yeah.
Okay. So when your project is like at 80% completion, then you can reach to us, SDNT. There's me, there's John. Then what we will require from you is send us an application that you require the staff gear up, and you give us a background of your project in terms of where it is. Then we will be able to guide you then what will be required. Okay. What will be required from your side for us to then process your application. So I think we will also be guided by you in terms of where your project is at with the development, but you must not wait until your project is completed. Okay. Hi, Luando.
Yes.
Mandla, can you please mute? I think there's someone that is in the background.
It's Luando. He's speaking to somebody else and listening to Tutu.
Yeah, so you must not
I
wait.
was just replying saying thank you. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, you must not wait for your project to reach a completion stage. Even if you require intense Luando, we are able to assist with that.
Okay, thanks, Tutu. Noted.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Ask the question. Yes, please. It's Tembele, yeah. I mean, there's so many grants. It's too much information. Thank you guys very much for the session. My question is, if a college you have not started right, and we're going through the stages of actually developing the business plans, I just want clarity around that. What grants are available for that, and maybe other assistance?
Sitembele, right?
Yes.
You
That's
are
correct.
are you an accredited SHI, or are you looking at submitting your application?
I'm looking at submitting my application.
Your application. Okay, so
Yes.
maybe we can have the conversation outside of this. I will, Amanda,
Alright.
please provide our email addresses, because the pre-accreditation grant is meant for you guys like you who want assistance with their submission. So currently we are in a process of appointing a panel of service providers so that we can be able to also allocate work in terms of the pre-accreditation grant supports for new people like yourself.
Oh, that's lovely. So the service providers, basically the intention there is for them to actually assist us throughout the process.
Yes. Yeah.
Some of
So
the-
yeah. So you must have your business plan, in place.
Yeah.
You must have attempted to have policies, even if they are not perfect, but they speak to your property development, they speak to your property management, they speak to your tenants management. So the service providers look at your documents, and look at what are the gaps in your business plans. what are the gaps
Okay.
in your policies? Then they work with you to say, let us refine your business plan so that it meets the SRA's requirement. They look at your governance structure and then they give advice in terms of what is required for you to have your governance structure that is required by the SRA. So they really work with you in ensuring that not only that you are submitting applications, but you understand the implementation of the social housing. Because at the end of the day, once you have the projects, you are running the project, you must be able to collect rent. You must be able to manage tenants. You must be able to maintain the properties so that your property remains viable, So we start from there. But also we run trainings that also assist you in terms of understanding what is social housing in its totality. How do you package your projects? How do you package your applications?
Oh, that's lovely. That answers my question. Thank you. But I think, interactions with you on the side as well.
Yes, please. Yes, please. There's Claudette. Claudette.
Thank you, Dudu. I'd just like to, and I don't know if I've missed this, but just like to find out, given the medium-term expenditure framework, and outlook on the submissions that have already been given to the SHRA, are you guys taking additional project applications in, or just a timeline around, when these new applications can be submitted?
I think I will hand the question over to my colleague, Sanele, and also there's a colleague that is going to be speaking to project development and funding, Claudette. She'll speak to that as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dudu. Morning, Claudette. Thank you for your question. We are receiving projects and currently assessing. It's business as usual until further instruction. You would remember, if you did attend the stakeholder engagement, or I think the recordings are available, where the CEO did indicate, did speak at large about the fiscal constraints, and that he is currently busy in the background trying to just get further, I guess, guidance, or to see what the allocation would be. So we would really be guided by the outcomes of those background discussions. But currently, the answer is yes, we are receiving applications and we are assessing applications in the accreditation unit.
Thank you.
Any other question, Manda?
I guess this answers the question that is posed on the chat box, which says, has government budgeted for SH grant funds for 2024? From what Sanele has alluded, I think it answers the question on the chat. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Okay, we'll now move on to project development and funding. And my colleague Notolo Jali who is a portfolio manager within the project development and funding unit, will take us through their processes. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone.
Before you continue, there's Tabile Zwan. Tabile, who has a question. Tabile, you can come in quickly. Tabile Zimu.
Thanks, Mandla. My question is, I think it's directed to Usanele. I'm sorry to take the meeting back to the previous presenter. With regards to the issues of corporate governance, what are the parameters that USHRA provides to the SHIs who may be in need of either guidance or intervention in the space of the governance issues within an SHI?
Morning, Tabile. I did mention in our approach, Uguti, there's a lot of facilitation that takes place, but in terms of corporate governance principles, it is King Code that we do use as the yardstick for, the type of governance principles that an entity should, run their company by for sound governance. So that is the guidance we do provide in facilitating. It would just be, pointing them out in terms of the board makeup as required, minimum 3 board members, maximum must be non-executive. So it's basically the principles that are outlined in the King Code. Well, the latest being the King Code 4. I hope I've answered you, Tabile.
Partially, yes, Anele. Say the process that you've just outlined now has been followed and there are policies and procedures in place, but within the workings of the board or the governing body of the institution, there seems to be differing opinions, and then and sort of like a middle person or an outside person is needed. Would SHRA play that role for the SHI?
Because our accreditation, we are accrediting that entity, it approaches the SHRA as having certain, mechanisms in place. And part of what we'd be looking at is that you are able to, you govern, your board, your entity accordingly. I guess that would be a red flag on our side if initially you're already having those challenges, because we don't really intervene at that stage in trying to get you and your board members to get along or align or have the same vision. However, at later on during compliance and the regulatory enforcement does entail our intervention, and that is solely to save the asset, because at that point we already vested so much into that entity. So yeah, the short answer is basically no. We do not at the initial stages intervene in how your board gets along. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Anele.
Right, thank you, Nakolo. You can proceed.
Thank you, Lesego, and good morning, colleagues. I am Nakolo Jali, a portfolio manager under the Project Development and Funding Unit. So basically, how we operate at the SHRA, according to the 4 programs in the organization, is that PDNF is the investment arm, where we manage the actual facilitation and investment of the grant itself. So we manage the Social Housing Investment Program, which we have shortened to the acronym SHIP. And of course, it's in line with our mandate to facilitate the delivery of social housing units through the investment of the grant, which we receive from the National Department. And the purpose is, of course, for effective deal-making partnerships and transformation in the sector. So the core functions of PDNF are at the assessment phase, it's our technical and financial viability assessment, because of course we need to ensure that when we invest on behalf of the government, we are investing in viable projects. We then, of course, as I mentioned, actually manage and administer the grant agreement itself. That's the contract that we enter into for the facilitation and investment of the funding itself. So within managing the agreement, it's about us managing the project implementation stage and the delivery of the social housing project. And then aside from our functions within managing the contract itself and the delivery thereof, we also then engage in the sector with our stakeholders, such as the governmental departments, funding agencies, and the private sector. And that was displayed earlier by Lesego, just to give you an illustration that SHRA is active across the sector with all our stakeholders to also ensure an enabling environment. So this is just an illustration of what our funding structure looks like. So the CCG is awarded at a fixed amount per social housing unit. So at this current point in time, the TCG grant quantum is 426,000 Rand and 308,000 Rand per unit. And the typical funding structure, this is just an example, an illustrative example to say, if your total development cost was 600,000 Rand per unit, the SHRA basically awards a grant on behalf of the government of 426,000 Rand per unit. And this grant is a subsidy. We subsidize your construction costs so that we reduce your debt burden and your investment in the development, which is what enables you to then subsequently rent the social housing development at preferential rates for our lower to middle income earning population. So we require 20% equity from our ODAs, and then the balance of funding will then be sourced through debt. So if you are not an ODA, then it means that the total balance outside of the 426 is what you'll source as debt or even equity. It's your discretion as to whether you'll also provide equity to reduce the debt burden. But this is just an example of what our funding structure looks like and how we award the grant itself. So in terms of current projects in the social housing sector, this is a national portfolio. So we've got projects all over the country. At the moment, we've got most of the projects located in Gauteng. And then as you can see, the dispersion of projects across the rest of the provinces, yielding a total of 47 projects. So it's all for entities wherever you are located to look for social housing opportunities within your region so that then you can contribute towards our national portfolio. So in terms of project performance, and this is just like our overall management of the project itself. So as I mentioned before, we facilitate the actual contractual agreement. We enter into a tripartite agreement, meaning that this is a partnership between the national government, the provincial or local government, as well as then the SHRA itself as the entity acting on behalf of government. So all three of us sign this agreement with yourselves, just to ensure that the partnership is engaged. So you have assistance from all spheres of government in that regard. And the government as well, of course, has a vested interest in the development. So that is why we signed the contract with both the SHRA, the provincial government, as well as yourself. So it's a tripartite agreement. We also ensure compliance with statutory approvals. That's in terms of whether your town planning, regulations, all kinds of things. Those active in the construction sector would know exactly which approvals I'm talking about. We want your building plans approved. We want you to comply with the building regulations as well in terms of your designs, so on and so forth. So we ensure compliance with statutory approvals. We then manage the cash flow of the development, not only in terms of the SHRA grant and how those funds are utilized, but we also ensure that all the sources of funds that you have gathered for the development, including your equity and your debt, that those funds are utilized appropriately for the delivery of the project. We, of course, monitor the construction program to ensure that not only do we invest in your project, but that you perform and deliver at the end of the day. So it's not for us to be in a situation where we've awarded and invested funds, but you don't perform on your end and bring forward the housing that is so desperately needed in our country. So we monitor your programming. So this is just in terms of the risks associated with construction and delivery thereof. Wherever you might be located, there across the sector, of course, there are general risks that each and every construction project faces, but we expect for you to also identify the risks that are inherent to your specific project, no matter what they may be. And we'll go through some of the challenges that we encounter in the sector. We also, of course, ensure quality control. We don't just facilitate the contract on paper. We are present on site. We are involved in your site meetings with your contractors and your delivery agents, your appointees. So we ensure that the project is being delivered to the quality that we expect at a general standard in the building industry. We of course monitor project progress, which is what I mentioned earlier. We need you to deliver, and of course that is the last one. Not only do you need to deliver the project, you also need to occupy the units that you develop. So the reason we also manage that exercise is to ensure that the legislated beneficiaries are the ones who actually receive the housing in the end. So we retain a portion of the funding as a retention, just 10% of your funding, just to make sure in the end that you do indeed occupy the correct beneficiaries, and we release that retention as the units are occupied. So that's just an overview of exactly how we manage the contract once you've been awarded. So as I mentioned earlier, there are typical challenges in the sector. So aside from the general construction related challenges, this process is quite lengthy. So this poses a challenge in our turnaround periods when it comes to your contracting phase versus your establishment phase versus how long you take to deliver. And it's because of the number of processes that are involved, not only with the SHRA, but also with our sector stakeholders, such as the provincial and local governments when it comes to firstly receiving support for your project, but also then when it comes to your regulatory approvals. We know that there can be some delays when it comes to town planning, for example. So there are various challenges which are customary to the building industry. So that is a challenge in the social housing sector because we're regulated as well. It might also have that added challenge with delay. Aside from that, securing debt funding is one of the inherent challenges in the sector. We have a lot of our grant recipients struggling to conclude on their debt funding applications timeously. So that is one, just to appraise everyone, just to really undertake the exercise to source your funding in advance and make sure that it's not a disruption when it's time for delivery. Of course, I also then mentioned statutory approvals as well can be a delay. And then construction mafia, it has become a challenge in South Africa, where we've had construction sites hijacked, and it's required some intervention. It's also posed safety issues and the like. So this is something that all participants within the construction industry should be aware of. We also have community protests or community unrest associated in this sector, only because it's part of the public program. There's some misunderstanding as to the difference between social housing, for example, and the other housing programs within the department. Social housing is a rental product, meaning that the beneficiaries need to pay rent. So the challenges we've experienced in the past is where the community is under the impression that this is a government development, it's a project for housing that is just going to be handed out. This is my home, the government gave me this place, it's mine, I own it. Meanwhile, the difference with social housing is, in fact, it's rental. There's no ownership. So that sometimes causes some community unrest, perhaps also in the area of construction work as well. The local community would want to be involved when the government is bringing an investment into the region. Are you employing some local laborers and things like that? So these are all the kinds of considerations that must be made when you are intending to develop social housing. And then lastly, delay in tenant occupation. Because it's a regulated environment, you're supposed to identify specific income earning beneficiaries. So it might pose a delay, whereas you might in the private sector have been able to just occupy anyone, no matter what they earn. In social housing, there's specific parameters. So sometimes it takes a little bit longer to occupy those units because you need to meet the criteria for the beneficiaries that are legislated according to the Act. So that just frames the challenges in the sector. And I think that might be my last slide. All sectoral challenges, just to add a few more. I think this also was summarized in the previous slide. So I'll jump straight to the mitigation measures. So on our part, guys, we do continuously engage with our funders to try and assist you. You know, we make sure we partner with these agencies to try and fast track the process. I think Sanele mentioned earlier, it's also an effort of ours to try and streamline our processes so that we can just have a little bit of flexibility in how long this takes. So instead of a lengthy application with SHRA and then another lengthy application with your debt funder, if there's some way that we can make these processes run in parallel or contain the same investment criteria parameters just to fast track it, these are the kinds of things that we are deliberating over to try and assist you. We also regularly engage with the municipalities, also the provincial governments as well, especially when it comes to delays with town planning and statutory approvals. We do endeavor to assist you and intervene when necessary. So we also appoint social facilitators to assist when we have early detection of unrest and the like. And beyond that, we also, as Dudu mentioned, we have a number of our support initiatives as well to create an enabling environment. So overall, it just demonstrates that we acknowledge the challenges in the sector, but then we at least are putting our foot forward as to how to combat them, assist you, because at the end of the day, it serves us to enable the environment and ensure that there's successful delivery. We can't just sit back and note the challenges and not intervene. Right, so these are just some of the examples of our projects. This is the House Street development in Kimberley. You can just flip through all the projects. This is our inner city refurbishment. We've got a greenfield in Cape Town. These are just some of our examples, and I just want to highlight to the attendees that, as you can see in these images, I mean, I hope you will agree with me, but this is an outstanding level of quality that we're seeing here. So social housing, we really expect that when you see our developments, you don't pinpoint this as a government program. This is just as good as any private sector development. It's not as if we have a substandard delivery at all. We expect you to bring forward projects that anyone would feel dignified to live in these developments, be proud to call these places home. So thank you. That is the project development and funding presentation.
Thank you for that, Nopolo. We will open the floor for questions.
Yeah, we've got Talukibe on the floor. You can patch in. Talukibe.
Much. Thank you for the information provided. Just a quick one, and I'm not sure if you'd be able to assist, but I mean, any idea on what the timeline, of dates are for projects that are already submitted? Especially when we look at those that have been confirmed to have met the minimum investment criteria. So would you be able to just provide us a timeline of dates for these projects?
All right, thank you, Claudette, for the question. So at the moment, we are unable to provide a timeline for projects that are already submitted and have been confirmed to have met minimum investment criteria. Following the session held just 2 weeks ago, the directive that we were given is that we need to take forward our current circumstance for following the cost containment directive through to our leadership committees, such as the project development and funding committee, as well as the SHRA council itself, to provide a direction as to how we will be managing the investment of new projects moving forward. So I believe the CEO had mentioned that this would be taken forward in the council sitting taking place in March, hopefully so that we could have a direction on the way forward in the new financial year, meaning as of April 2024. So hopefully by then we'd be able to provide the sector with direction and some time frames.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll go to the supply chain management presentation, and our supply chain manager, Mr. Mthokozi Zinqobo, will be taking us through the supply chain management presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Lesego. Good morning. My name is Mthokozi Zinqobo. I'm the supply chain manager at the SHRA. So my presentation is focused on those that are interested in becoming service providers for the SHRA through our procurement processes. So I will touch on the following topics that have been listed there. The first one is the transformation and supply diversity, business opportunities at the SHRA, challenges with working with small, medium companies, which most of us will be amongst those, I would think. and also companies that are owned by the designated groups. We will get to show you what categories are considered to be those designated groups, and also understanding the SRA's procurement mechanisms, the methods that we use to procure our goods and services. And also we have a vendor registration process that we are embarking on because we are trying to attract mostly companies that are owned by members of the designated groups, or which is an area that we have been struggling with. So we are trying this new vendor registration so that we have these companies on our database, so that as and when we have procurement opportunities, we invite them and we get a good response. Next slide, please. So the South African government has a transformation agenda which it seeks to utilize its buying power to develop local industries with the objective of encouraging economic growth, creating employment, and dealing with the problem of inequality, which is very prevalent in our country. So there is a need to accelerate the capacitation and improving the capability of local businesses through technology transfer, skills transfer, and also job creation. So in these projects that we have, we need to get participation from locals in those areas where the projects are, as service providers or as providing the labor that is required. Because there is an outcry in the country, in the communities, which I think we are all aware of, that people feel left out of opportunities, which also contributes to such things that we've been seeing, such as the construction mafias, because it starts from being disgruntled and taking matters into your own hands, which obviously can have a lot of undesired consequences, as we have seen. But we need to see what we can do at our level to ensure that the locals in that area get to participate. Because, I mean, it wouldn't make sense to have a project in the Eastern Cape and you take an electrician or a plumber from Johannesburg to Eastern Cape when there are people that can provide those services in the Eastern Cape. So we would really encourage that you make use of local service providers and local labor in those communities where these projects are. So we have a need also to transform the service provider that we get our goods and services from the previous establishment that used to be there. There needs to be a change now under the new dispensation that we are in.
Yeah,
with a focus or particularly on the designated groups, which are Black youth, Black women, Black people living with disabilities, as well as military veterans. So these are the designated groups, which are the people that have been excluded for the longest of time from opportunities. So we want to attract these people into the active economy so that they can also participate. And these people form the majority of the citizens in the country. So if we can get them in the mainstream economy, it will assist with a lot of challenges that we have as a country, such as crime, unemployment. So and it will economy if the majority of the citizens can participate. Next slide. So then on this slide, it's just some of the opportunities that exist in the SRA if you want to become a service provider or a supplier to us. These are the kind of services that we will be looking for. You will see that most of the services that are listed there are not goods, but rather services. It's just the nature of the work that we are in, that we procure mostly services. So those are some of the services that we will require, and we need to attract a diverse supplier base. Next slide. So on this slide, it's just our procurement spend targets, which are in our annual performance plan. So we have these targets that we need to meet. So the first target is on spend on companies that are owned in majority by Black women, which on that one, we are doing well. I would say we are meeting the target. However, the other 3 targets are where we are having challenges. We need to be procuring or spending 20% of our budget with companies that are owned by the youth, of which we are not able to meet that number that has been set. The same goes for people with disabilities and military veterans. So those are the procurement processes. Slide, it's just some of the challenges that we experience in working. I got disconnected for a second there. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Oh, yes. Okay, thank you. So on this slide, it's some of the challenges that we experience in working with small businesses or companies owned by the designated groups. I must first start by saying that there is a huge improvement on non-compliance to administrative and legislative requirements. So when it comes to registration on CSD, compliance with tax, registration on CIPC, there has been an improvement on that. So we are not having that challenge anymore. We just want to highlight that we have noticed that improvement. But where we have challenges, as I mentioned before, that most of what we procure are services. So there are certain requirements that will be put there in terms of the skills and experience required. So we find that in companies that are owned by these designated groups, there will be a lack of that experience and also those qualifications that will be required. And also in the completion of documents, we have found some challenges. Specifically, you will see that the approach and methodology is a standard approach and methodology that is used for every procurement that comes through. It's not customized for the request that you are dealing with at that time. So then it doesn't assist us in our evaluation because we cannot confirm that you understand our request and you are able to provide the service that we require. Another challenge is you will find that companies do not include timelines and a schedule that can be understandable in their bid documents to assist us in the evaluation process. So those are some of the challenges there. Next slide. Then also it goes both ways. So some of the challenges are self-inflicted, I would say, on our side, where you will find that our terms of references and our specifications are not clear. So the people that are interested in responding do not understand what is it exactly that we require from them. And also, we have noticed that some of our technical evaluation criteria are not specific on what supporting documents are required. So we don't specify that for you to be able to claim or be awarded points on this evaluation criteria, these are the documents that you need to provide to substantiate that you have the desired experience and qualifications. So that's something that we have picked up on our side that we need to improve on. And also, there is a requirement on the number of years of experience that a company or the team members that have been provided needs to have. So in some instances, you will see that this requirement will be too high, and it defeats the purpose of trying to attract new entrants into the industry, because we have this stringent requirement of 10 years of experience that you need to have, of which then where will you have acquired that experience if you have not been given any opportunities, which is what we are trying to address. So that is a bit of an own goal on our side. So we are reviewing that with our end users to say, is it really necessary to specify so many years of experience on this one? But obviously there will be instances where it is required, because also we have to get value for money for the services that we procure. It will be undesirable for us to award the company and they fail to deliver, and we have to award another company for the same work. Then that is wasteful expenditure. But we need to strike a balance between our requirements that are necessary and not being over stringent in terms of, especially on experience, because we understand that we're trying to attract new entrants into the industry that will not have acquired the experience before because of the lack of opportunities. Another challenge that we have seen is we will require qualifications, but you will find that there are people that have a lot of experience in the industry, but not necessarily the educational qualifications. So there needs to be a way to recognize prior learning and prior experience instead of qualifications in certain instances. Thank you. Next slide. So in terms of our procurement mechanism, so below 2,000, we use petty cash, so we don't follow a competitive process for such amounts. But then from 2,000 to 1 million, we need to obtain a minimum of 3 quotations. So we issue a request for quotations or request for proposals and get a minimum of 3 quotations. That's on the threshold from 2,000 to 1 million. Then 1 million and above, it's an open tender that will be advertised on the National Treasury e-tender portal as well as on our website. But even for procurements below 1 million, we do advertise on the website and on e-tender just to attract a wider audience of service providers. Because currently in our database, we don't have, as I mentioned before, we don't have a lot of service providers. So to avoid using the same service provider that we have always used, because it doesn't assist us in achieving the objectives that we need to achieve. And then we also have deviations where we don't follow a procurement process, but obviously these are under very strict conditions because we need to always follow the normal procurement process. But if there are justifiable reasons for why you need to go on a deviation, then we will motivate for that. But this is not encouraged to be a normal practice. Next one. Yeah, this will be the last one. So this is for our vendor registration. So if you are interested in us having you on our database, we use the central supply database from National Treasury, but sometimes it doesn't give us a good profile of what the company does. So we will request that you send us your company profiles so that if we have related requests, then we can include you as we can see what services you provide. The supply chain presentation, thank you very much. We will take questions if there are any.
All right, thank you, Thokozisi. That actually brings us to the end of the session. So we can take a round of questions in terms of any questions around supply chain management.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for the presentation, Mnumzan. I got a quick question, please. Last year I saw there was a process that was being undertaken. It was calling for service providers to register on a database for various pieces of work. And I believe Leo database was for a period of 3 years. The question that I have is, within those databases, are AMA service providers going to be required to bid for work on a competitive basis, even though they're already on a database? Normal, will there be a rotation to ensure Umsebenzi is allocated equitably amongst the service providers that are already in such databases? That's the first question. And then the second question is, if you'd like to be a service provider, but you missed the opportunity to register during that round of call to be in the database, and you happen to be locked out for the next 3 years, if AMA service providers that are already in a database will have to compete competitively within those databases, if you didn't get a chance to be within the database, it almost feels like you'll be at a disadvantaged position, whereas still, even if you were in a database, you have to compete. I don't know if you get what I'm trying to say, but if you don't, if you just focused on my first question, please, I would appreciate that. Yeah, bon.
Oh, yes, thank you for the question. I think I do get you. I think the two questions are related.
Yes.
So what you are referring to is what we call a panel of service providers.
Yes.
So it depends on how the panel was appointed. Some panels will be appointed with a pre-agreed rate. So
Yes.
which means that the rate is the same for all the companies that are in the panel. There we will rotate, we will use them on a rotational basis. However, where the service providers have been appointed only based on their technical functionality, but not on a pre-agreed rate, then we will issue price quotations. So that will be a competitive process within the panel. Then if you have missed out, you were unable to respond to the request for bids on the panel, then it will mean you have to wait for the 3 years, as during the 3 years we cannot add new companies in the panel. We don't have a process of refreshing the panel, say after 18 months or after 2 years. It's something that maybe we may look into in terms of the regulations, if it can be provided for. But then you must just be on the lookout for other requests that will be issued that are not part of the work that is done by the panels. Thank you.
Look, I'm 33 years old right now, so in 3 years I'll be 36. I won't be youth anymore.
Yeah, that's actually a challenge that we experience with youth, because it's a moving target. Even some of us few years ago we were youth, not anymore. So yes.
Okay. No, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, if there are no more questions, then
we've got Claudette.
Okay.
Sorry about this. It's not a supply chain presentation question, and if you'd allow me just to go back to the previous presenter, just 2 questions. Is the SHA going further than the minimum investment criteria when they're looking around the assessments? And then the second question is there a schedule of TEC meetings that are now available? Thank you.
Hi, Lesego, I'll take that one. It's fine. I think that could have gone to Sanele, but it's fine. I'll just quickly jump in. So in terms of looking at anything further than the minimum investment criteria when looking at assessments, It's also the norms and standards. So we also just look at whether or not the project is meeting the new norms and standards, which were gazetted last September. So your project needs to meet our investment criteria as the SHRA, but it must also meet the norms and standards as well. And then to answer the second question, no, there is no schedule of dates for the TEC meetings, especially now as we've reached our fourth quarter. This March is the last month of our financial year end. So that means that the next scheduling dates would be for the new financial year as of April 2024. The dates have not been set. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Notwalo. Okay, so we're going to wrap up the
Fezile?
session.
Fezile is on.
Fezile, okay, all right.
Yeah, Fezile, you can come in.
No, sorry, Chair. No, that was a mistake. Thank you.
All right, thank you. In terms of all the information that was presented today, in terms of the processes like project packaging, project accreditation, SHI accreditation, we do have training sessions on an annual basis, and you can look out on our website for those dates. On the homepage, on the main tab, the last tab is training sessions, or you can follow us on social media. On our YouTube channel as well, if you search Social Housing Regulatory Authority, we do upload all the training sessions that we have. It's various topics, and they are useful. And then also, if maybe after the session you have further questions or you want to get in touch, you can drop us an email on info@shra.org.za, and then we will forward your question or your email to the relevant person. So that brings us to the end of the session, and I'd like to thank you for attending and showing interest in social housing, and we hope that you'll be sending those applications for accreditation and the project accreditation, and also through submitting proposals to our supply chain. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.